First item, apologies and substitutes.
Yes, convener, we have apologies from Miles, with councillors Brays and Brown substituting.
Thank you. 2 declarations of interest.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Whiteside and Councillor Speed.
Thanks, convener. I don't have a declaration as such. I've got a proposal. I'd like to propose that we defer item 8, report 2922. Myself and my team have concerns that we've not been given quite enough information in order to make a decision on this. We're aware that the IGB plan to discuss this later this month on green paper, and therefore we're a little bit worried that we've been asked to make a decision and we don't have all the relevant information.
Okay. Is there somebody there? Right, it was right. The reports by Gail Smith, but is George there? Perhaps. George Bowie.
Hello. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. On you go.
I'm not sure what information is lacking. Maybe if Councillor Whiteside said, I would be able to comment.
Well, I've not seen the green paper, therefore I have no idea.
Okay, I'll try and explain that. So what we were asking of the council and what we were advised was a legal duty was that the council should offer a collective opinion about the consultation process and the options appraisal, and can express a view on options as well. What the IGB is asked to do is slightly different. The IGB is asked to make a decision about the which of those options is the preferred option. That's a decision that's delegated to the IGB as opposed to the council. So the consultation, or what we're asking of the council, is to come to a view about that options appraisal and the engagement process. But it doesn't have the decision about which way this should go. That's deferred to or delegated to the IGB. The reason it's on green paper is because some of the numbers of residents in the internal care homes are so small that they could be personally identifiable, and that would certainly not be appropriate in the case of our very vulnerable service users.
Thank you for that, George. Back to you, Councillor Whiteside.
Well, I'm still a little bit uneasy about it. I suppose it might become clearer when we discuss the item, but I think Councillor Speed would like to come in there as well.
Yeah, right, yeah, see that. Thank you for that. Councillor Speed, do you want to come in?
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just a bit concerned about the lack of information in the report as well. But I was also going to come in onto a declaration of interest because I am an IGB board member. So I would be declaring an interest, but I do have a dispensation to take part in the meeting and the agenda item. I think one of the questions I would have been asking on this agenda would be how could the council and the P&R committee effectively
Councillor Speed, can I stop you there? I don't want any questions regarding the report right at this present time. I'm sorry.
No,
I know you would like to do that.
How we would manage to feed into a report that was due originally tomorrow at special IGB.
Okay, Councillor Duff, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I just wanted to clarify my understanding of what Mr. Bowie said. And I think my reading of what he said was that we are to review the process today. The actual merits of the decision will be taken by the IGB because that decision has been delegated to them. So we are reviewing the consultation process and the options appraisal process, and we have to say whether we think the process is okay or not. The merits of the decision lie with another body. That was my understanding. I'm sure Mr. Bowie will clarify if I've got that wrong.
I'm of the same opinion, Councillor Duff. Mr. Bowie, do you want to come back in?
That's correct. Now, I'm not sure if the council has the authority to express a view about which of the options is preferred. I don't know about that. Alison Watson might be able to clarify that, but my understanding is certainly as Councillor Duff said. Yeah.
Yeah, right, that's fine. Alison, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Just to confirm what's been said by Mr Bowie, the purpose of the report before P&R Committee today is in order for the Council to provide feedback in part of the consultation process, given that they're a stakeholder in the process. So the information provided in this report to P&R today is the same information that's been provided to other stakeholders as part of the consultation process. And the intention is that the feedback of the Council as a collective group would be given by the committee today in order for the report to then go to the IJB to make the full decision. So hopefully that clears up for members the position and the purpose of this report. And yet it's very much for the committee today to give their feedback on the consultation and a view on the options, but not to take any decision on those options as that lies with the IJB.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Councillor Speed, is that an old hand?
Sorry, it was just, for my declarations of interest.
Right, no problem. Councillor Boyd.
Yes, it was just to say, I suppose as a point of clarification, that I think we were all offered the chance to write back and give all our views on this. So I'm thinking as a little bit, is it chicken and egg or not? Just now, we were all given ample opportunity. None of us are happy with it. It's not us to make this decision, but we all had the chance to put our feelings known to George and the team over the last. Can I have that clarification?
Alison Watson, do you want to come in on that? I know George is champing at the bit there.
I'll let George in just shortly, but yes, certainly all elected members were emailed about this with an opportunity to provide feedback, which is valuable to the process and will be taken into account. And then obviously there's the requirement to have feedback from the council as a collective, so that requires the input from this committee today, and that's the purpose of this separate report.
That makes sense. Thank you very much for that, Alison.
Okay, George, do you want to come back?
Just to reiterate that the distinction between the individual responses and the meeting today is that it's a collective view that is being sought. Just to say to Lois as well, the report, which we'll be looking for a decision, is not now due to be heard at the IJB until the 23rd of February.
Okay. Councillor Boyd, is that an old hand? Oh, you've got right. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, having listened to that, and thank you, Councillor Whiteside, for raising that concern. But I do believe that we've got a way forward, and we take item 8. Would that be agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, right, we'll move on with the agenda. Where did I get to? Item?
Declarations, Convener.
Right, thank you. But right, item 3. I'm supposed to score them off and didn't. Right, item 3 is the minutes. A, the previous meeting, and B, the appeals subcommittee. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Convener, apologies for interrupting. I think Councillor Speed still has to finish her declaration.
Oh, right, beg your pardon. On you go, Councillor Speed.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 8, as I'm a member of the IJB, but have a dispensation, so will still take part in that agenda item. Also, agenda item 9, the contributions policy. I have family members who receive health and social care and who may be affected by any decisions made, so I will take myself out of the meeting and come back in after.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Okay, we'll go on to item 4, which is the Capital Monitoring General Fund Capital Programme 2021-22, reports by Ian Lorimer. And can I just say thanks to Gillian Woodcock. You have the recommendation. Any questions? Not seen any questions, any comments? Okay, I'll take that as as a no. The recommendation is one, reviews and scrutinises. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Item 5 is the Revenue Monitoring 2021 and Renewal and Repair Fund position 2021-22. Reports by Ian Lorimer, and can I again say thanks to Jill Rennie. You have the recommendations. Are there any questions or comments? I'm seeing nothing, so I'll take that as a no. Any comments? Okay, you have the recommendations. It's 1, review and scrutinise, 2, note, and 3, note. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Go to item 6. That's the COVID-19 funding, the discretionary funding, the project approvals. The report is by Ian Lorimer, and can I say thank you to Victoria Gibbons? You have the recommendations. Can I also say thank you to all the work that the officers, especially Victoria and others, have done, and some many good projects that have benefited from this. I'll go to questions first. Is it a question, Councillor Whiteside?
No, it's just a comment.
Okay, I'll just write any questions. Okay, don't see any questions. Councillor Whiteside, come in with your comment.
Thank you, Convener. I was just pleased to see the summary of all the spend to date, and it's good to see how many useful uses has been found for the money, and it's very welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Councillor Whiteside. Okay, we've got any further comments? Okay. We've got the recommendations. It's 1, approve, 2, note, and 3, note. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item 7. That's the Tay-Cities deal update and Montrose 5G project acceleration. Reports by Vivian Smith, and may I say thank you to Mark Davidson. The recommendations are there for you. Are there any questions? Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. Just one short question and then a comment, if that's okay. Just take them together.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's at 4.4 on page 66. I was just wondering about the hydrogen, which is going to be available at the Angus Rural Mobility Hub. This is clearly in the future, but we would be looking at having green hydrogen there. Can I just ensure that we're not going down the route of the blue hydrogen?
Okay, who can help there, Vivian or Mark?
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Devine. Absolutely, that's a key consideration, and we're working closely with our partners in Dundee, and there's some developments coming forward at the Michelin Innovation Park, which would be looking to develop green hydrogen as opposed to blue hydrogen, is my understanding. But it's certainly something worth considering for the future, as you say. It's early days for this particular project. Thanks.
I know it is, but I was pretty sure that with the green economy aspect, it would be green hydrogen that would be getting put on there. I just also wanted to welcome very much the Centre for Agri-Tech and Sustainable Innovation, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's called the CASI, and it's just along the road from me in Forfar at the Mart. This is great for Forfar, it's great for Angus, great for Scotland actually, and it's the first in the UK bringing these businesses together along with the council and along with the James Hutton Institute. Clearly at the moment the companies involved are quite well known and quite large companies, but I would imagine and certainly hope that in the future the opportunities for smaller companies to take advantage of the innovation and the commercialisation and the environmental sustainability being produced being promoted by the CASI will take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. I've got Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, convener. It really follows on from Councillor Devine's question regarding the Brechin Rural Mobility Hub. I wondered if you could perhaps give us a wee bit more detail, where possible, on what exactly is going to be happening there. I fully appreciate that this might well be a movable feast because we're at, but in the very early stages with it, and we don't really know where all this is going regarding transport, etc. But just a brief description of where we are with it.
Yeah, I'm sure Vivian can help us there. Thanks, Councillor Bray. Vivian?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Councillor Breeze. It's a really exciting project, actually, and a good partnership project with Dalhousie Estates. We've signed the Memorandum of Understanding with them now, and there was also, Angus Council had set aside 3 million in its capital plan for the development of a business park there. So joining those kinds of things up is absolutely critical. The transport hub is really, the site there is a really important connection between Aberdeen and Dundee and on to Perth and beyond. And we feel just off the dual carriageway has a good opportunity to become a distribution centre. So not only a fuelling centre with clean fuels like electric and hydrogen-based fuels for some of the bigger vehicles that we anticipate. HGVs will, for example, likely in the future be fueled more on the basis of hydrogen, but can drop off their packages, etc. there, and we can look to use smaller vehicles for those last mile deliveries up to the Glen, etc. So that we're not having the big vehicles going all over the countryside and using fuel in that way. There's also an aspiration around having a touchdown base there for people to come and work when they're commuting and things. So making property, I guess, more sustainable for the future. But as I was saying earlier, it is at the very early stages of design and development for that particular project, and a full business case will be worked up in due course. But it's exciting to see the Memorandum of Understanding now being agreed between the council and partners.
Thank you very much, Vivian.
Yeah, right, absolutely, Vivian. Thank you very much for that. I'll go to Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Mine's really just a comment, just as a local member in Montrose, quite happy to welcome the port. There's a lot of exciting things at the port, and it's good to see that, and it's good to see the other developments, the CASI and the Brechin Business Park moving forward. So some of these have taken a little bit of time to sort of get into place, but that is good to see.
Yeah, right. Wholeheartedly agree with that, Councillor Duff. Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Thank you, convener. Mine's a comment. Is that okay?
Yes, on you go. On you go.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the CASI press release and media interviews that took place last Friday, which people I'm sure will have seen. It's really very important, this, because Angus is lucky enough to sit in the middle of a strip of wonderful land between Aberdeenshire and Kent, and it means that Angus farming is amongst the best in the UK, most productive in the UK, and therefore potentially in the world. But it succeeds, and we'll all remember over the last 40 years it's gone through its ups and downs. It succeeds because it's competitive as an international business or international businesses, and it's selling to international markets and meeting international competitors. Therefore, the whole point of the CASI project is to ensure that technology is brought to bear to help farmers keep ahead of the game increase productivity, and this is one of the great benefits coming out of the Angus Fund, which of course is all part of the Tay Cities deal. So it's wholesale good news. Thank you, Convener.
Yep, thank you for that, Councillor McMillan Douglas. Councillor Boyd.
So sorry about that. I couldn't move from one screen to the other there. It's to do with it's a comment, and it's to do with Appendix 2. It was nice to see that the Comrie Hall in Carnoustie, when you first look at the list of breakdowns, didn't seem to be much going in Carnoustie and District, but it is good to see, if you look at reading the small print, the situation of bringing back in delivery of adult and family learning services and using the Comrie Hall in Carnoustie for 12 months. It was also good that that hall was used for the time when we were waiting for the Early Learning Centre to be built, and therefore it's good to see some income getting spent in Carnoustie. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. I think when you look round and what Tay Cities deals is actually doing and achieving, it'll be all over Angus and it'll benefit the whole of Angus. So thank you for that. Councillor Sturrock.
Thank you, Convener. I welcome this report, and it's good to see now that all the projects, and we're actually see some flesh going on the bones now, which is indeed very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturrock. Councillor Boyd, is that an old hand? Okay, have we got any further? Right, we jump between questions and comments here, but not a problem. It is a good news story, what's going on. Any further comments? I'm going to take that as a no. You've got the recommendation. It is 1 note, 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes, 5 notes, 6 agrees and 7 approves. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Move to item 8, which is the internal care homes, future delivery arrangements, the consultation with Angus Council. The report's by Gail Smith, but thanks to George Bowie and Alexander Berry. We've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Not seen any questions. Any comments? Councillor Whiteside.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, I suppose it was kind of a question in respect of the timing of this report. We've obviously just come through the pandemic. We're not out the other side yet. The care sector's been hugely affected by the pandemic, and I'm just concerned that this is the right time to be making such a long-term decision. I don't know whether Mr. Bowie's got any thoughts on that. Thanks.
I'm sure he does. Mr. Bowie?
Yeah, it might be helpful if I explained a little bit of context, because I think that is relevant to the timing question. And you're right, Councillor Whiteside, in a way the timing isn't good, given what everybody's been through in care homes. So I should explain some background. The demand for care at home as opposed to care homes increased during the pandemic from 10,350 hours per week to 13,500 hours per week. That kind of peaked in last September. So an increase of 1,000 hours per week translates to £1 million over the course of a year. So that's an increase of about £3 million of business for care at home. At the same time, the demand for care home places reduced, and it currently is sitting week on week at about 100 vacancies of 1,000 beds in care homes, and that has never really changed. We've had slight dips down to kind of the high 80s, and it's going back up again to about 100 vacancies. So we've got a massive increase in demand for care at home and a significant reduction in demand for care homes. And what happened is the growth for care at home would continue. It would continue to rise if the system was able to meet the demand for it, and it currently isn't. So at the moment, we have 1,364 this week hours of partial or unmet need for care at home. and that covers 153 service users. So that's 153 people whose needs we're only partially able to meet, or we can't meet at all. So by partial meeting, that would mean, say, somebody required as part of their assessment 3 episodes of care a day, who might be only able to provide 2 and be reliant on family members or friends to provide another one. So that is a far less than ideal situation. So all of this, of course, was discussed in a number of meetings at the IJB, and there was an agreement that we needed to move capacity from care homes, where there was reduced demand, to care at home, where there was an increased demand, and also to preventative and early intervention work, which is probably the one bit of our strategic plan that we had not been as successful as we would like to have been in implementing, mainly due to COVID reasons. So the IGB did agree to move resource by the value of up to 40 care home beds across into care at home. And it also agreed that 20 should be, or up to 20 should be from the internal care home sector. Now, the reason for that distinction is partly due to fairness, but it's mainly due to the fact that internal care home beds are much more expensive, and if we decommission internal care home beds, we have more money to reinvest in areas of greater need, in particular care at home. So I would really want to stress this is not about cuts. This is about achieving resource to reinvest into care at home. The consultation and engagement process, which is good practice to carry one out, and it's also a legal duty, we wanted to include all stakeholders in that, and provided the options appraisal, obviously, for everybody to consider as well. We did consult with Doreen Phillips, the Equalities Officer, and followed national guidance on engagement. The only caveat, I suppose, we put on our options was that any option must raise funds to transfer into care at home. Otherwise, that's the whole purpose of the exercise. You can see in the report that I've identified risks in proceeding with the plan and risks in not proceeding with the plan, and it'd be fair to say there are risks on both sides. So that was a bit of context, and I'm embarrassed to say I've forgotten what the question was now, Councillor Whiteside, sorry.
I was just concerned about the timing of the decision. I mean, I totally appreciate the aim, and most people would welcome care at home in preference to care home. However, there comes a point where some people need 24-hour care that can't be provided in a home setting, perhaps. And I'm just concerned the effect of the pandemic on the numbers might be given a false view, and whether or not the decision would be better delayed. And that was really the basis of my question.
Yeah, I must admit, when we entered into this business, I had the same misgiving myself. I did wonder if there would be what we were calling a bounce back into care at home, but that does not seem to have happened, and we've been monitoring that for months now. And it doesn't seem to be moving back to increased demand in care homes. We still have plenty of capacity in care homes even to absorb that if there is a bit of a bounce back. And I think the urgency comes because of the people who are not getting the care at home packages that they need, because we can't invest sufficiently in that, and that's not something that we can leave indefinitely.
Okay, thank you for that, George. Does that help, Councillor Whiteside?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyd.
I thought we'd moved on to comments, so mine is a comment. Is that okay for me to start? If it's
I don't think
comments?
there's any other questions. Are there any other questions? I don't think so. No, on you go, Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. I was listening to the bit that George was saying along with Councillor Whiteside and about the stakeholders, and I think we have this unique situation in Carnoustie where we maybe haven't consulted with the stakeholders, and that being the community. Because what maybe not everyone is aware of, that not only is the centre, the Kinloch Centre in Carnoustie, it is also a community centre as well, with the closure of the Panmure Centre about 4 or 5 years ago at the start of this political cycle. The Panmure Centre had to close, and there were lots of people in the community were therefore using the hall within within the centre. So I've put this, of course, in my form back that we did as councillors, but I think it is worthwhile reiterating again that the Kinloch Centre is in a unique position. It is the jewel in Angus's crown, and it's in fact it's got so many things going for it, including the dementia centre, that is actually a jewel in Scotland's crown. So I just felt I needed to make these comments, or at least be on record to say these things. The big one being, of course, the stakeholder, and that our stakeholders have not been potentially written to ask how they feel about it. There'll be a lot of people upset. The cycling for all, maybe people remember after the Open, the various cycles that have to take all the old folks out of that home, and that is a lot of people here will remember Lorraine Young, who were the older councillors will remember that name, and she's done a power of work to make sure that they're getting the community into that place. So let's not try and forget that, or that's up to the IGB, of course, but let's make sure the IGB don't forget these points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there were some questions in amongst that as well, but thanks very much for that, Councillor Boyd. Have we got any further comments on this paper? Looking like no. So we've got the recommendations.
Sorry.
Oh, Councillor Speed.
Sorry, convener. Yeah, my hand kept jumping on and off. Sorry. Yeah, it just really was a comment. Mr. Bowie obviously answered one of the concerns that I did have was around the timing of this committee report and being able to feed back to the IGB. But that agenda item has now been moved back and isn't being taken until later on this month. There's that. But yeah, I just wanted to comment with regards to I have had the opportunity to raise concerns and ask, questions with regards to this consultation previously, and will continue to do so in my capacity as member of the IGB.
I'm sure you will, Councillor Speed. Okay, we'll go back to the recommendations. You've got those. 1 is considers and 2 provides feedback. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Number 9, so Councillor Speed, you're going to leave the meeting?
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody will remind me to bring you back, I'm sure. Okay. Number 9 is the contributions policy, non-residential care services, and it's the annual update. Reports by Gail Smith, and can I say thanks to Alexander Berry. We've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor Whiteside.
Sorry, it's me again. I was trying to get in before you finished the previous item. I was just a little bit unclear.
Sorry.
I was just a little bit unclear about our feedback. There didn't seem to be a conclusion on what that feedback is, unless I'm misunderstanding. I wasn't quite sure what we were agreeing to there.
Right, well, we've already agreed that, so I'm not going to go back. But right, perhaps George, you could go back and answer that question for Councillor Whiteside separately, please. It's all right. Right, I'm not going to change protocol. Okay, as I said, right, we've got the recommendations of number 9 right in front of us. Are there any questions? Don't see any questions. Any comments? Okay, see no comments. The recommendations are 1, agree and adopt as policy, and 2, agree. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 10. I thought I heard a voice there. Item 10 is the Angus Antisocial Behaviour Strategy 2021 to 2026. The report's by Alison Smith. And can I just say the work it's obviously gone into the quite phenomenal.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can we just hang on till Councillor Speed's back in, please?
Oh, right. See, I knew somebody would remind me.
Just bear with us 1 second, please. Thank you, Convener. Councillor Speed's back in now.
Thank you. Councillor Speed, apologies. You'll never guess what I did. Forgot about you. How could I possibly do that? Anyway, right, so I'll go back to the beginning. Angus Antisocial Behaviour Strategy 2021-26, report by Alison Smith. And as I just said, can I just thank Alison Smith for the tremendous amount of work she's done in putting this report together. We have the recommendations. So I'll go to questions first. Councillor Devine?
What I would like to ask, just a few clarifications, Convener.
Of course.
Right, well, just to start off, I'm really delighted to see this new strategy coming before us today. And I hope the structure can be put in place as quickly as possible, because as a Forfar councillor, I'm seeing the stats on antisocial behaviour escalating. So it's important that everyone involved recognises that antisocial behaviour is not low level. It really impacts on people's lives, causing them worry, fear, and distress on an ongoing basis. I have to say, in 2018, the decision was taken by the administration to disband the very successful community safety team. And as councillors, we all knew who to go to then, and it worked on a multi-agency basis with early intervention at its core. So it would appear that we're retracing our steps and not before time. So while I really endorse the strategy, I just want a bit of clarification. Like on page 119, we're often told that if somebody is evicted, we need to rehouse them. And I don't think that's what I'm reading here in the last two paragraphs on that page. So I'd appreciate clarification there. I mean, I hope that what is written there is absolutely going to happen, that stronger actions can be taken. Perhaps especially when we come to talking about drug dealing, because that is very, well, it's an increasing problem in our communities. And if you can go into any of our communities, and people will be able to tell you the numbers of the doors where the drug dealers live. So hopefully this multi-agency operation will be able to take action on that. So I'll leave it there. If I can just get a wee bit of clarification on these two things, that would be great. I do have a meeting with Alison Smith on Thursday, and I can bring these up again. But if she would like to, or somebody would like to give us some clarification, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, Alison can help.
Yeah, so John Morrow is actually here, and John will be able to provide that detail in terms of your specific questions. So John's actually in the meeting as well.
Okay, we'll go to John.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Devine, for that question. Housing providers can put in a suspension period before people have accommodation offered to them, and that suspension period is flexible depending on the seriousness of the case. So it's very much used on based on the circumstances. It's not something that we use that often, and perhaps that's something we can explore when we meet later this week, because there are some cases which we could use as an example, and I think that probably would form the basis for further discussion about whether that's appropriate. And it might be something that we can bring back through as to committee at a further stage, depending on what cases those suspensions are used in the next sort of year or so. We'd want to come back to committee anyway to provide some sort of monitoring and review of where delivery of the strategy is at. So hopefully that'll provide a bit more information at that stage. But if you're happy enough, we could talk a bit further on Thursday, I think, as we're meeting.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you very much. I just think that the vast majority of our tenants are they abide by the rules, but there's a significant minority who don't, and it is so perplexing for those who are doing their very best. And if action isn't taken, you can understand their frustration, especially when it actually ends up not as so much as frustration as fear. So yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Morrow. Let's see, I've got Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks. Convener, to agree with some of the comments that Councillor Devine has made. The former setup at county buildings where we had community safety working in close proximity with police worked very well. I feel that in those days we had a big team of community wardens, many of whom were ex-police officers, and they were very effective at dealing with antisocial behaviour. Over the years, my feeling is, well, I'm sure lots of these people have now retired, and we've then sort of moved the community safety team predominantly onto parking enforcement. And I personally feel we don't have enough troops on the ground here. And I like most elected members, I do get complaints of antisocial behaviour, racialism, this sort of stuff, which is obviously a bit unpleasant. I guess the question I had, the stats that are on, I can't remember the page now, the one with the pie chart, which is page 128. The numbers just don't ring true to me. I find it difficult to believe that there's more antisocial behaviour in Montrose than Arbroath, given the population discrepancy. And I would say that the pie chart, the percentages in the pie chart don't agree with the numbers in the table above. So a slight query about that, and a question about really how sure are we these stats are really accurate. So that would be my question, I suppose.
Okay, do you want to come back, Alison?
I think there's probably a mixture. John and I can probably answer that. So I think in terms of the statistics that are there, they're obviously drawn from reports that we have. You know, when we talk about reports, I suppose there's a bit more of drilling into that, and maybe there's a little bit more we can, when we bring back following monitoring reports, just really explaining exactly some of the statistics there, because it may be in terms of number of incidents reported, it's really drilling into that, if they're repeat incidents, if these are new incidents, etc. So perhaps there's a bit of broadening out of some of that reports in terms of what's there. Obviously, what's been put into the strategy as is at the moment has come from the partners, bearing in mind this is a partnership report, not just a council report. So that information has been drawn from our partners, including Police Scotland, as well as our own team. But we can certainly, drill into those statistics and then bring back that monitoring just to, provide a bit more information around that. But John, if you want to add anything else to that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go to Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I think it's a good report, and while I mean it's good on paper, the practical side of it needs to be developed. That's my opinion. I don't think it's been done as well as what it could be. There seems to be some form of breakdown with the partner agencies, whether it's communication coming back into us to tell us, what is happening out there. I've had reports from constituents where they've placed a telephone call to the police, and it's been a week later that someone's actually come to get a statement or whatever from them. They've got to now make an appointment, or an appointment's made for the constituent. So some cases, they're not getting addressed at the time. Going back to a comment that a query that Councillor Devine had about people can, as far as I'm aware, they can present their cell if they're homeless, so we could evict them effectively, which isn't done in many cases. We could evict them and then they can just represent themselves and get another house, which to me, that just moves the problem elsewhere. It did say that a lot of the majority of problems were noise, but I think a lot of the noise develops from alcohol and drug misuse within the home. I don't think anybody would argue with that. Certainly that's what I'm getting back from a lot of my constituents. That's there's all these things involved in antisocial behaviour, I mean, it's not just in the homes. We've got, you know, the speeding about the towns and whatever. And I feel some of our partner agencies aren't doing as much as what they could possibly do to help us get on top of this. And I'd like to see more from the partner agencies.
Absolutely agree. This is not just all down to the council. Okay, John, do you want to come back? I notice you put your hand up. Do you want to come back and have any comments?
Yeah, if you don't mind, convener, just building on what Alison Smith said, and I think Councillor Stewart makes the point as you have there as well, that the strategy here is a strategy for the community planning partnership, not just the council. And it's through a kind of a collaborative, multi-agency approach that we aim to deliver the services that benefit the community. But Councillor Stewart is quite right; it can be very frustrating because, like most of the organisations involved, and there are a lot, resources are always an issue. And that's one of the reasons why the strategy does focus, as you've probably seen, on prevention, on collaboration and engagement, and that collaboration obviously is the bit that that sometimes suffers when resources are scarce, and it can be difficult as well to put resources to prevention when you're trying to respond. But these are common problems to a number of themes that the council is well aware of. Just in terms of what Alison Smith said, I think, and going back to Councillor Duff's point around the statistics, people's tolerances and expectations do vary considerably in different areas, and depending on the type of antisocial behaviour that they're experiencing. And the response to that can also vary hugely. And noise was mentioned there. That does apply particularly to noise, because one person's idea of antisocial behaviour noise can actually be just normal living noise. People living in their home, perhaps where there's poor insulation between flats, that's a common problem, and that's where the tolerance levels do vary. So we might get reports from one person about excessive noise, whereas another person perhaps is happy enough to live with that. In terms of the statistics that Councillor Duff mentions, the numbers of reports alone don't really tell us much, and Alison Smith is quite right that we need to look a bit more at the data and analyse that to get a better profile of what's actually happening. And that's in terms of both complainants, what a complainant's complaining about, and also sort of the alleged perpetrators. Because what we're trying to do is get a better understanding of the triggers so that we can then identify the best resolution. The difficulty can be as well that cases can be resolved in the short term, and Councillor Stewart knows this only too well, that in some cases you think you've resolved the case, perhaps by mediation or some sort of verbal intervention, but it doesn't mean to say that it goes away in the long term. It can stay dormant, if you like, and then re-emerge at a later date. And that's why some of the statistics can be a bit skewed. It can be the same case that's arising again in the same area. So that applies as well to resolving cases. That concept that you're resolving a case and it's completely finished is a difficult one. And that, of course, means that monitoring the level of activity is also difficult. And the community planning partners involved in the antisocial behaviour strategy obviously understand this. And quite right, that a trigger for a lot of the antisocial behaviour is substance misuse and mental health. So those are really high on the list of contributing factors. I think the collaboration between partners is working. And I know that in the past there was a different model in terms of the unit that was at the Mart, where the CASI is taking place over there. But there still is collaboration, and you can see from the long list of agencies involved in the strategy that cooperation is there, and information sharing is good. So mediation and conflict resolution is there as well. But it's not always easy to get the resources that necessarily required. And that is one of the main challenges. So it's really a comment, I suppose, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, right. Thanks for that, Mr. Morrow. Okay, I'm going to move on. I've got Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. And thanks for the report. There's a lot of good information in there. It's quite an interesting read. My question's around page 128, the chart at the top of the page. Councillor Hand and myself were quite surprised to see in amongst the listed towns, the village of Muirhead listed. So I was just wondering if anybody had a little bit of context around why one village is there, whether there's a particular problem, or whether there was perhaps one or two particularly problem tenants, and just a little bit more information, please.
Okay, who can help there? Is that back to you, John?
Yeah, probably convener if that's okay, Councillor.
Yeah.
I think it's identified really as an indicator of the SID law area as opposed to these, and there it has been some antisocial behaviour, but it's really so that that incidence is not lost and it's captured somewhere. I don't think the number of cases is high, but that's really the reason, just so it's not lost in the statistics.
Okay, thanks for that. We're going to move on. Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you, convener. Yeah, it was just under the areas for development and consideration. And one of the key themes there was a lack of understanding around roles and responsibilities. I know certainly from constituent feedback that I've received, when constituents get in touch who, have been complaining about antisocial behaviour, it may have escalated to their case sitting with the antisocial behaviour team, that they just feel that, their case just gets kind of passed around, and, every department kind of puts it to the other to try and resolve. So I just wonder what will be done to overcome that and to make it clearer as to who will be taking the lead in these type of situations. I guess that may vary depending on the nature of the incidents, but from a kind of constituent public experience, what can be done to make that more clearer and easier for them?
Okay, who wants to come back with that one? John?
Yeah, happy to come in there, convener. But I think in a way, you put your finger on it, Councillor Speed, that it will vary. The lead organisation will vary depending on the type of antisocial behaviour. I guess the challenge for us is to get better communication out to people so that they know how to report incidents and where to go, and then what happens. There is collaboration behind the scenes, and probably is not necessarily visible to complainants sometimes, that there's an exchange of information and there's a discussion around what actions might be taken and who might be involved in that. And that obviously it goes on behind the scenes, as I say, and is not always visible. I don't think that would necessarily change, but you're quite right that probably we need to get better, and this is in the action plan, at communicating where people can get help, and then what their expectations should be in terms of timescales and who would be involved. So we hope to get better at that over the course of the next few months. But again, a lot of these things, I suppose, are subject to the resources that we and our partners have, and that is probably the biggest challenge that lies before us, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alison, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to what John was saying, that there's always that learning about how the partnership can work better together, and I think the strategy and sort of that refocus around the strategy and putting that emphasis back on partnership and on prevention, it's good timing to do that. And I think that has to factor in, the available resources and putting that degree of reality about what can be done when within that. But there's also that part about being aware of, our customers, our citizens, etc. But that bit around the communication is really important, so that we can sort of set out, these are the expectations, this is how we can work as a partnership, and just being quite clear about what can be done. I think there's always that point around, the sort of moving around different partners and sort of trying to identify a point of contact and where people can get that information, and really getting that to become more two-way is something that certainly the partnership can pick up through this new strategy and action plan.
Okay, Jonathan, you want to come back in?
Yeah, just briefly, just building on that, and I think one thing to point out, I think, and there's a frustration often for people who are complaining, quite rightly, that there's been some disruption to their lives. Sometimes where the cases involve people with mental health conditions, those are very often can be the trigger for behaviour, and that behaviour isn't necessarily considered antisocial behaviour because it's a result sometimes of, you know, the mental health condition that they have. However, that doesn't mean to say that's not really frustrating for complainants who are experiencing the behaviour, because it's then, shall we say, very difficult for that to be communicated to them, because you're talking about personal information. And we've probably got to get better at how we frame that discussion and that feedback to customers, because as Councillor Stewart alluded to earlier, very often the trigger does involve some form of mental health, whether that's as a result of substance misuse or not. But that reason for the behaviour is one of the issues that, as I say, is very difficult in communication. And complainants often, you know, vent their frustration, which is understandable.
Thanks, John. Okay, I'm going to move on. Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I wanted to come in and support what Councillor Stewart had said earlier. All of us will know, and it's terribly sad, how drug dealing absolutely destroys some of our areas, some of our housing areas. And you see people who have got well-kept gardens and homes completely disrupted by drug dealing, and it appears to me anyway to be getting worse and not better. Now, clearly part of this is for Police Scotland, but I think we really must do more in whatever strategy we use to address this issue. Otherwise, we're simply not fair on the majority of our populations.
Thank you for that. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Of course, as others have said, antisocial behaviour is a blight on many people's lives and causes huge damage to their health and their happiness, and we have to do what we can to reduce it. One part, I think probably one crucial part in this is early years learning. And I'm not naive enough to think that that's a silver bullet, but I think it's probably going to play a huge part in how we deal with antisocial behaviour, how we reduce it, and we're never going to eradicate it entirely. But I think if you look at the countries around the world that are way ahead of us in terms of health and happiness, one of the common themes is the amount of resource that they put into early years. I think that the better we do with early years, the better outcomes will be for an awful lot of people, and the damage that might be inflicted on communities will be lessened. So I think we need to basically make sure that early years is part of the mix, and put as much resource as we can into that, because that's the way that you reduce prison populations, and that's part of the way that you reduce antisocial behaviour as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Braze, I don't disagree with that. You know this, but it's an awful lot of words that people have said, and probably this has gone back for many, many years, that just exactly what you said there, early years, right, intervention. But they keep saying it, but it doesn't happen, and perhaps it's about time something did. Okay.
Well, we've never had the resource put into it before, Convener.
Well, that comes down to right government's giving us that resource, right, Councillor Braze. Okie doke. I think we've said enough on this subject. Again, I'm still going to thank Alison Smith. I think right, terrific. We've got that report. We are working with with our partners. There's a long way to go, as Councillor Braze has said. There is a solution, but whether that'll ever happen in my lifetime, I've got my doubts. Are there anything further you want to say on this report? No, good. The recommendations there, it does say 2. I'm sure that should say 1, but it's notes. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we will go to item 11, which is the Brechin City Hall, the lease renewal, and the reports by Ian Cochrane. We've got the recommendation. One of them, right, of course, is number 3, commends the Brechin City Hall user group, and I think what they have done there, I think there are a lot of people in early days thought that wouldn't happen, but right, tremendous, and I do congratulate them right on the work that they've done. So are there any questions? I'm sure there'll be comments. Comments? Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, convener. And well, I would like to congratulate the Brechin City Hall Users Group, BC Hug, for the absolutely splendid job they've made since ever they took this, what seemed like a very onerous task, since they seized this opportunity and ran with it. I would certainly recommend that we sign the lease with them for 25 years. That they seem to have a pretty sound sort of succession in place. You know, it doesn't look to me like they're going to fall apart because they have so much support from the whole of Brechin and its surroundings. So I would certainly recommend this, and all power to them. And I think it goes further than that. This is the way to run a hall in a small town, in my opinion. And I think that's been proven. I think that the Hall Users Group have done far better than Angus Alive ever could or would have done. And that's not a criticism of Angus Alive. It's a criticism of the model, really, where we have a corporation running what is basically a small town hall. The model doesn't really work, and I think we need to be looking to be doing more of this sort of thing and encouraging communities wherever we can. So.
And I'm sure that's a goal of the council, but no, thank you for those comments, Councillor Braze. Councillor Boyd.
Yes, it's similar comments, but Councillor Braze has beaten me, but quite rightly so, since he is the councillor up in Brechin. But I have lots of good friends. I know these people all too well that have worked on that hall over the last few years. I meet them once a year at the end of November when the clocks change at what is called the NODA conference down in Peebles. So it's been a topic of conversation for about the last 5 or 6 years. So. Which is good, and it's excellent that they're now moving forward, and it is an example that other towns could be doing in Kirriemuir, as an example. It is happening in Montefieth. It is happening hopefully with Panmure, and hopefully Councillor Braze, you could pass on to them that they have so much guidance to give other groups in the smaller communities, and if they could tell them how they managed to turn this into success, because quite often people shy off from the situation because they just think it's beyond us. This is a fantastic success story for Brechin, but could be a fantastic success story for other small communities or small boroughs within Angus. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Boyd. Any further questions or comments on this particular item? No. Okay, we've got the recommendation. It's 1 agrees, 2 agrees, and 3 commends the Brechin City Hall user group. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 12. That's the former St Thomas Primary School in Seaton Road in Arbroath. The report's by Ian Cochrane, and many thanks to Gavin Balfour. We've got the recommendations. Can I just say, I'm really pleased, I would certainly be moving this report. It demonstrates not only this administration's, but the council's and the opposition's commitment to ensure resources are aligned to deliver, along with our partners, on the priorities in the Angus Community Plan. So I'm going to, as I said, we have the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to see this report coming. And I just wondered if perhaps it's a little bit too early to say, but is there any kind of estimations on timescales for delivery of this project?
Perhaps Mr. Morrow can help us.
Yes and no, probably, convener. Yeah, there are some timescales for delivery, but they're not precise at the moment. To some extent, it depends on if the report is approved by committee. Some discussion with the Scottish Government around where some funding might be coming from the Affordable Housing Delivery programme, and also looking at our own capital programme. So I would have thought that, I mean, there's no excessive infrastructure on the site to be cleared away in this particular instance. But looking at the programme, I would think that we're looking at probably starting somewhere in the year 2024, I would have thought. We've got a fairly full capital programme already outlined, so and it will take us a while, obviously, to work up designs and work towards planning submission and so on. So we're probably talking about up to a 2-year lead-in period, and then a 2-year or 18-month delivery period, depending on the design solutions.
Not that far away, Councillor Speed.
No, thank you.
Okay,
I just on that, I just wondered what will be done to kind of look after that site in the meantime, because obviously as time goes on, it is, you know, the building itself is being neglected, if you like, and the grounds as well. So we want to obviously keep that area as best as we can in the meantime. What works will be done to ensure that?
Again, if I can come in, convener.
Yeah, in you come, John.
Yeah, if the site is if the report is approved and the site is appropriated to the HRA, the HRA would then take on the maintenance of the site, and we'll make sure it's kept clean and tidy. And depending on the lead-in time for the programme, you know, there's other things that we could do in terms of discussing with the local community if there's perhaps some short-term sort of wildflower meadows being planted, that kind of thing. But they do take a while to establish, and we'd have to be sure that, you know, it's not a wasted resource. But certainly we could have a discussion around, you know, what we could do with that asset until the time that we start building on it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Boyd.
Apologies, it was an old hand. I will take it down.
Right, no problem. Thanks, Councillor Boyd. Okay, is there anything further on this? Oh, Councillor King, sorry.
I was going to say, right, I welcome this report. It's long overdue, considering the Househead St Thomas complex moved some time ago. I'm looking forward to seeing new council housing built on this site. It's been a long time since we've been able to build council housing for rent without having the threat of having it to be sold. Because during the bulk of my time as a councillor, I've watched the continual attrition of council housing available for rent, as council housing had to be sold under the right to buy. And the difficulty was, of course, under those days, and many the newer councillors won't realise this, the only thing we were allowed to do with the proceeds of selling the houses was pay off debt. We were not allowed to build any more council houses. So that's why there's such a shortage of council houses for rent, and why I'm welcoming the opportunity here to get 40 council houses for rent on this site in an area of town where there is a big demand for council housing. And I only hope that we can hold on to them for as long as we should be able to hold on to them, because this is a very good site for council housing in the area. There will be a major facility adjacent to the site for sporting use, and there are excellent schools in very close proximity. As I say, it's a long time coming. I only hope it doesn't take as long to develop as it did take to develop the Abbey Quarter, because I was the Deputy Provost when we started that, and it wasn't finished until maybe about a year ago. It was a very long time in coming. I'm watching this work that's going on in Timber Greens at the moment. It appears to be moving a bit faster, but certainly I would expect to get some wind under this one and get these houses available for rent just as soon as possible, because they are desperately needed in our road.
Yeah, 100% agree with you, Councillor King. John Morrow, you might want to come in.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Councillor King is right that in terms of the Abbey Quarter, it took a while. It was interrupted by inevitably by the early stages of COVID, when we weren't able to do any works on the construction sites, and that was particularly frustrating because it was close to being completed when that happened. So we were obviously pleased when we were finally able to get the project completed. Timmergreens is moving ahead quicker, and as Councillor King knows, we'll be soon moving on to the next phase 3 in that area, and hopefully that will deliver even more visible results in Timmergreens to finish that off fairly soon. I mean, in terms of St Thomas, I think that if committee are approving the report, clearly one of the first things to do is to make sure the site is clear with the school going. So that would be the first visible signs of the project going ahead. So once we have confirmation in terms of the funding in the strategic housing investment plan, we can put that in motion. We do have some estimates on the cost of that, and also we've already done work on the ground conditions. So we have prior knowledge about what's involved with developing the site, and that should put us in good stead for bringing it forward as quickly as we can.
Okay, thanks for that, John.
I would just like to conclude by saying I'd like to see that building come down just as fast as possible, just in case somebody else, somewhere else, has bright ideas of another use for that building.
Fair comment, Councillor King. Been there before. Okay, right. Any further comments on this particular item? No. Okay, we've got the recommendations. Is 1, declare surplus. 2, approve. Is the report agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm going to move to 13. Another good news story, I believe, and that's the site of the old Forfar Academy at Taylor Street in Forfar. Reports by Ian Cochrane, and again, thanks to Gavin Balfour. We have the recommendations. Again, can I just go back to what I'd said previously, and the growing availability of social housing is critical. It does improve mental health well-being and directly addresses child poverty, and it's something that we as a council should be moving forward as quickly as we possibly can. So I'm going to move to questions. Colin Brown. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Convener. Mine is not really a question. Mine is more a comment than a question. So if you want to go for questions first, but mine is a comment.
Okay, thank you. Right, questions? Councillor Devine.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Obviously, really pleased to see this coming forward. It's been quite a long time coming, but at least this one is a clear piece of land. There's nothing has to be demolished on that. But in the page 181, the last paragraph, it talks about a kind of mixture of tenures. I wonder if that could be explained a wee bit more. It doesn't look as if there's rented properties here, and I would hope that there would be. Could somebody give me an idea? Well, Mr. Morrow will be, if you could give me an idea of what you're looking at here.
You're a popular man today, John. Could you come in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Convener, and Councillor Devine. I suppose our proposal that we were intending to put forward is that this site we think is particularly suitable for focusing on low-cost home ownership, affordable housing products. So still affordable housing, but a range of products rather than just traditionally social housing for rent. So in this case, we're thinking of things like mid-market rent and shared equity, and you'll be familiar with the site in Monifieth at the Grange, where we've delivered 22 shared equity products. We've completed all the sales there, and we'll be putting out some communication about that. There is a high level of demand for these kind of mid-range products that sit between social housing for rent and the full private sector, and it's something that we want to try and provide more products in, because we know there are people that whilst they're maybe unable to access mortgages for full home ownership, they want to have the ability to have some form of home ownership, and shared equity delivers on that. And similarly, mid-market rent has a place between social rented housing and the private sector. So that's what we're proposing, probably for the site. But clearly, that would be dependent on committee approving the transfer to the HRA, and then identifying the design solution for the particular site, because there will be site constraints and infrastructure issues, as well as obviously planning concerns that we would have to take heed of. So that's the intention of the kind of product that we think would be suitable for the site.
Okay, thank you for that, John. Have we got any further questions, Councillor Whiteside?
Thank you, Convener. Just very quickly, a question for John. In terms of shared equity and shared ownership and those type of models, one of the criticisms is that after they're sold on, then the property is lost for affordability. Are there any new models on the horizon that might solve that problem? Because while I do agree there are people that fall in between, but going forward, the properties are then lost for that purpose.
Convener, if I'm okay to come in?
Yeah, on you go, John.
I mean, there are constraints in terms of whether that property can be sold on, but in a sense, you're right that product is then for that particular household, and the advantage with the affordable housing product, social housing for rent, that it's pretty much always available in perpetuity. But we have to try and, I think, and this is what the local housing strategy sets out, provide a balance of different products to suit a range of people's needs and wants, and that's what we try and do. We don't necessarily have these different products all on the same site. So some sites are for just purely social housing for rent. That might be council housing, or it might be housing associations. But equally, I think there are some sites which we think are suitable for these other types of products. And as I say, the Grange in Montefieth is one such for the shared equity, but Timmer Greens, on the other hand, might be social housing for rent. So we're trying to have a balance of what we achieve across the range of sites that we have available. But clearly, if members felt that there should be a slightly different mix on this particular site, because it can accommodate a fair number of houses, then that could be a further discussion that we could have.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Councillor Whiteside. Hopefully that helps. Okay, any further questions? Okay, we'll go to comments. So that's Councillor Brown.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I was pleased to read in the report the site at Taylor Street could be used for housing. I would like to ask that we consider this site for a new school at this time, until we get an assurance from education that we are not going to require a new school in the future. This would be a perfect site for another primary school in an area that may be developed with another 250 houses on top of the 300 new houses that's already there. We need to plan ahead. And their schools are nearing capacity at the moment. After all, this land already is in the children and learning control. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Brown, I don't think, right, when I listened to that, I don't think that was a comment. I think it was more a question. Is there somebody from education can perhaps help with that?
Yes, Councillor Fairweather, I'd be delighted.
Thank you, Mrs. McIntosh.
Answer that. So the report that's up to date refers to the development of 48 affordable homes, and that would result, or could result, in an additional 11 primary age children, based on the assumption that we use, which is 0.23 of children per home. And that number is, of course, not guaranteed, and it's subject to change based on the type of homes that are developed and the demographic of the families that move in. Our existing rural forecasts indicate that the catchment primary school can accommodate that increase, and there is also additional limited capacity within the other town schools, again subject to change, and actually our rural forecasts up to 2028 see the roles dropping across our schools, our primary schools. There are no specific plans at this time for a new primary school in Forfar. My team continue to review the learning estate in Forfar, as they do all learning estates, because of the dynamic nature of projected roles, because we look at birth rates, people moving in and out, housing developments. We work with our planning team. And also we look at the physical buildings and how we can utilise them better if rules increase, and we continue to do that all the time. It should be noted, I think, it's worth mentioning that the current Schools for the Future programme, the Forfar Learning Estate, is scheduled for formal review in the phase beginning in 2029. And that's one of the reasons that there is no plan to build anything there. And you mentioned over 200 houses perhaps being built in this area. So I've done a quick calculation based on the number that you said, Councillor Brown, and that equates to, again, about 56 primary age children. We do a different calculation for secondary age children. So again, at the moment, across the town schools, we could accommodate that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mrs. McIntosh. Does that help, Councillor Brown?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I was going to Brown's getting the cart before the horse here. We do have an approved development plan which does define the number of houses we think we need in Forfar. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the plan that we should be working on. Yeah, looking at the council's financial position, I'm not sure that at the moment another primary school would be affordable.
Thanks for that, Councillor Duff. I'm sure Councillor Brown's just looking to the future, so and why not? Councillor Boyd?
Yes, it's a comment. Interesting, both this report and the other report, both to do with old school buildings, and so therefore it comes to the situation that we've talked about around about maybe a year ago as well, where we finally agreed to move the old Kinloch school site in Carnoustie to the HRA after 15 years of waiting for it, where one of the town's iconic buildings was demolished, where that could have turned into where it happened in other places up in Forfar. When all their Forfar schools got closed down, they in turn managed to keep their schools and turn them into lovely flats, where Carnoustie's one was demolished. But of course, it's taken us 15 years to get to this with the Carnoustie. So, but we as a committee have agreed that this about a year ago. So I'd love to think that naturally the site at Carnoustie will be the first one to get the council house, the well-needed council houses that are needed. In fact, I think actually South Angus has the biggest waiting list for council houses, not Arbroath. So with that in mind, I really hope that we will be kept at the top of the pile, especially after the threat from Councillor Salmon that he would remove the funding from that when we were debating Edzell. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Can I remind you that Arbroath is in Right Angus South? Okay, we'll move on. Are there any further comments? No. Okay. We will. You've got the recommendation. It is.
Point of order, Councillor Fairweather. Arbroath is at Carnoustie and Monteith are a different locality. You know that. You've been here for 15 years.
We're still in Angus South.
Under Arbroath.
Right, thank you, Councillor Boyd. We're still in Angus South. We'll move on. Right, I don't want to hear any more of that. We have the recommendation. It is to approve. Is the report approved?
Agreed.
Agreed. Or agreed. Sorry. Agreed. Thank you. We'll go to item 14. I'll remind members that there is an appendix, item 2, exempt, and I would ask you not to comment. So it's the site at Lure Road, Forfar. The reports by Ian Cochrane, and again, thanks to Gavin Balfour. You've got the recommendations. Are there any questions? Councillor King?
Yeah, I'm just getting out. Will we have an opportunity to discuss the contents of the Green Paper after we come to a decision?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any further comments? Okay, we have the recommendations. It's one, recommend that the committee dispose of the site, etc., etc. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to possible exclusion of public and press. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And we'll go on to item 16, exempt item Appendix 2, and I don't have to ask who wants to speak on this. Councillor King.
Yes,
Convener,
I'm just looking.
Convener, sorry, can I just make sure that the live stream has
Yeah,